Hello, my fellow space blobs, or whatever form you happen to be coming into this space today. I am so happy to have you here. My name is Sarah, and we go into tarot and astrology, but I think with a real mindset of how do we bring these mythologies, these storytelling tools into our lives? How do we make meaningful storytelling in our lives? And that's really fitting for the conversation we're going to have today with Jupiter and Gemini. You might notice I am standing in my kitchen, and that is because I just needed to change it up. I am needing to try out some different things. I'm needing to play around. I'm needing to lighten up when it comes to this work and just not do the same thing all of the time. It's not a big radical change, but it's a little bit of a difference. And I think that's a really important part of this conversation today. How do we have fun and bring back play? But also, how do we do that while we are living in this version of the world that has so much injustice, so much pain? We are experiencing it at such a massive level. We're being exposed to the reality of that on such a massive level. There's a lot going on in this world. And it makes me think about a poem by Jack Gilbert called A Brief for the Defense. And he says, "We must have the stubbornness to accept our gladness in the ruthless furnace of this world." And I think that this Jupiter and Gemini transit that we're about to talk about, that's going to be happening for the next little over a year, really embodies that idea that we both are experiencing the ruthless furnace of this world, and that there's a stubborn gladness, and that these two things can exist at the same time, and that they will exist at the same time, and they in fact always have existed at the same time. So how do we allow these multiple things to be true all at once? How do we hold that in our bodies? How do we allow ourselves to change? Jupiter and Gemini are both extremely philosophical energies, very open-minded, wanting to play with ideas, wanting to hold many things all at the same time. It's a very electrical transit. That means we will be feeling the electricity of longing for change and seeing change happen and come into the world and flow into the world. This is very adaptable energy, and that means that I'm also hoping that this conversation today, we can set up some tools for ourselves so that this is sustainable, so that it feels healthy, and so that we can destigmatize some of the ways that we may be experiencing change and some of the dualities of this world, some of the multiplicities of this world, and how we live with that in this world. So I hope today will be a really comforting conversation for all of us and get us a little bit inspired, a little bit comforted, a little bit open-minded toward ourselves and what's possible in the world, and also to know that we can be both deeply saddened by the events of the world right now, and that it's okay to be kind to yourself in the day you are living. So let's get into it and explore Jupiter and Gemini. I don't know about you all, but for me, I have been longing for some new Jupiterian influences to come in. I've been longing to reconnect with Jupiter and that kind of energetic at a meaningful level for a little while, because Jupiter is really associated with this idea of optimism, expansion, growth. And I know that when we're talking about this idea of expansion and growth, I don't want to put it into the kind of capitalistic mechanisms that are often associated with those words, where it's always about getting more likes, more attention, more money, more, right? That has gotten us into a really dark place. And you could even argue that Jupiter, when it's overused, can become quite a dark place to go to, because of course, only ever expanding is going to be a little bit destructive once we get to the far reaches of that, right? But I do want to kind of reclaim, when we're talking about this idea of growth or expansion or optimism or any of these things, it's not about optimizing ourselves to be part of a machine, optimizing ourselves to be bigger, better, bolder. It's about letting something unfurl and unfold that longs to be unfolded, and learning to develop and notice what it is that wants to be developed and unfolded. It's about the allowance of that unfolding to occur. And one of the first things I want to talk about here with Jupiter This planet associated with so much language around big picture, big philosophical ideas, and this idea of optimism is, are you allowed to want to unfurl something beautiful? Are you allowed to access the beautiful wisdom of Jupiter, all of that beautiful grace, all of that beautiful support, all of that beautiful longing to hold and care for you and bring you the pathway that is longing to unfold in you? And I think whenever we are shifting into the next sign with Jupiter, it's a great time to just think about your relationship to this planet, relationship to even this energy, this constant abundance energy that really wants to help us unfold and unfurl our souls in meaningful ways in the world. Are you allowed to access it? Are you allowed to want it? Are you allowed to play with it? And how would you like to support yourself to do that? Jupiter tends to shine a spotlight on places that we need to practice greater discernment and also what needs nurturance and attention. I think of Jupiter because it's this massive energy. It really is like a giant spotlight, and it can help us see where we are longing for attention, where we're longing for shift. And that is just going to be expanded that much more here as Jupiter moves into Gemini, because where Jupiter in Taurus had a lot to do with our foundations, with the way we take care of ourselves, with kind of thinking about how we're embodying, and maybe even just slowing down a little bit and really looking the ingredients of our foundational systems. Jupiter moving into Gemini is such a different feeling. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, which is this sign of optimism, free spirit, this centaur energy of kind of combining our wild nature with our intellectual minds and what that looks like, the freedom to try new things, to break rules, to move outside of the prescribed way of living a life. Those of you who have spent any time with Sagittarians, they are personally some of my favorite people in the world. Their boundless optimism has saved me so many times. I happen to be a Jupiter or a Sagittarius rising, so I'm already partial to Sag energy, but we're going to be playing with Jupiter in the opposing sign of Gemini. So this is a really interesting combo, and I think it actually works quite well together. Gemini, as the mutable air sign, is all about playing with ideas. You know, this is a great storytelling energetic and a mentally busy energetic. But I think what's really most interesting about Gemini in general, and why I think it has so much value right now in the world, is that it allows us to hold multiplicities inside of ourselves. It challenges us to allow there to be space for us to be many things at one time, and the world to be many things at one time. And I think we are experiencing that at a really profound level right now because of how intense the world is. And it can feel a bit difficult to figure out how to hold all the pain in the world and all the beauty in the world all at once. And Gemini is very interested in that conversation, how both of these things can so validly be existing at the same time, and a whole rainbow of things in between. That mutability, that flexibility, that open-mindedness, that ability to shift between worlds. You know, Gemini is ruled by Mercury, so it's all about weaving between different versions of the world, different visions of the world, different ideas of it. I think allows for there to be space for all of this to be there. And that's actually very freeing, because so much of our world has so much absolutist thinking in the way that it's run, and even the way that the internet sometimes is showing up for many of us. There's this absolutist thinking that's all around. Gemini challenges a lot of that, which can be about playing devil's advocate. It can be about, you know, taking sides that are a little problematic or might push some buttons. But I think when we're really getting down to the soulfulness of Gemini, it's allowing us to be many things at once. And that allows a freedom and a breath that allows for experimentation and play. So when Jupiter is here in Gemini, and this opposing sign to where it normally is ruling, it's a really interesting combo. Jupiter and Gemini are philosophical. They want to play with ideas and come up with new ideas and really innovate and play around with what we assume is true about ourselves, about our process, or about how the world has to be. And sometimes I've seen some descriptions of this transit that I'm about to get into the themes of as being very busy, like overly busy, like your mind will never stop asking questions. Why is it like this? What should I do? How should I be? Should it be like this? Just laying in bed at night, essentially just overthinking everything. And while that could be one way you could end up working with this energy, I think it's important to remember that a really intentional practice with Jupiter and Gemini isn't just about anxious thinking, right? I think that's not the essence of Jupiter and Gemini. Jupiter and Gemini is about figuring out what questions to ask and to start asking them and to start getting curious and to start digging deeper into what it is that's longing to be seen, longing to be known, longing to be expressed, longing to be expanded and explored. So this next year, we're starting this transit on the 25th of May, 2024. It's going to go till June 9th of 2025. Jupiter always spends about a year, just over a year in each sign. The last time we had Jupiter in Gemini, I always love to think back, was June 11th, 2012 to June 25th, 2013. And before I get into themes, I just realized I wanted to mention just a couple of things. One is, if you happen to have strong Gemini, what does that mean? Maybe you have a ton of energy in Gemini, a Gemini sun, Gemini rising. Like I mentioned, Jupiter is kind of like a big spotlight. So for me, it's interesting because a lot of times Jupiter in your sign or in a personal placement, people will talk about it as this very lucky year, and this is your 1 year, so you might as well do everything that you possibly can to maximize what you're getting out of it. But I would say that Jupiter, if you have a lot of Gemini in your sign and Jupiter's moving through here as it is, it's highlighting what needs to be paid attention to, what is longing to be expressed. So you might notice some friction, some tension, some discomfort with what's getting illuminated because you're getting asked to change in a meaningful, vulnerable, real way. It's a very exciting time as well in that you are seeing and understanding things that long to be expressed, but themes that involve being asked to show up for that can be really powerful. And I also wanted to mention Jupiter returns because we all have these every 12 or 13 years. If you have a natal Jupiter in Gemini, similarly, it's returning to this spotlight. It can often be a time of turning over a new energetic cycle, beginning a new creative cycle for you. It might illuminate themes that are very important personally to you about your creative cycles. So for the last 12 or 13 years, what has that cycle been? So I just wanted to throw those in there as some themes for those of you who have strong Gemini energy. So let's talk about these themes, because what I'm hoping to do here as we talk about the themes is give us some tools for how to manage this very open-minded, playful, and it doesn't have a strict form, Jupiter and Gemini. It's very free-flowing. So how do we work with that in a sustainable way? So one of the first things is that, like I mentioned, this is a combo that's really going to be opening our minds, allowing us to hold multiplicities, dualities, competing parts of ourselves all at once, different aspects of experiencing the world. And with that comes this idea of expansion and contraction as very, very important whenever we're working with strong Jupiterian energy like we are here. And what I always say is, as you're growing, as ideas are coming in, plan for contraction. Just plan ahead for it now. Contraction is so important when we're growing and changing and allowing ourselves to hold many things as true at the same time. It does take energy. It does take getting used to. It does take acclimating. And that means we need contraction. We need pullback moments regularly throughout this kind of expansive energy. So just plan on it right away. I think so often we think, this is my year, this is my time. Maybe, you're a Gemini sun, you're just so ready for Jupiter to come in and play with you. And it's like, yes, let's go. And we don't plan for those rest moments. Plan for them during this transit. Whatever that looks like for you, whether that's knowing that you need one afternoon a week to turn off all of your electronics and sit outside, or whatever it looks like, do it. Get to know the warning signs of when you're realizing you're very, very tired, and think about how you want to facilitate contraction. When you do that, life changes a lot. And I'm just going to throw that out there because it's actually interesting. Jupiter is the biggest planet in the solar system. But part of how it gets heated is not by the sun. It's by the contraction of its core that is burning and doing this work of contracting. So I just think it's a really fun little metaphor there for our own process, that we need that in order to keep progressing, keep opening and unfolding what is wanting to unfold. The world is changing. Visions are changing during this transit. So this is our next theme. Things aren't going to be set in stone or feel complete or like you just have like a nice bookend moment. So taking care of your self is really important here, because if things are always kind of open-minded, that can leave us feeling a bit floaty. It's great to think about ways you'd like to ground, how you would like to just find some moments of concreteness. Go back to some of the themes we've been learning from our work with Taurus, and just take all of that wisdom that you've had from this last year into this year as far as giving yourself some grounding. Discernment is going to be a really important part of our journey with Jupiter and Gemini. We are all going to be practicing we're going to be doing our reps, going to the mental gym and thinking about how we discern what is longing to be unfurled and what we are allowed to let go. We're going to constantly be in that dialogue this year. There's going to be a lot of beginning and a lot of ending. And actually a book that I love and I highly recommend if you're looking for a little inspo is the book Quit by Annie Duke. It is so good. And it really talks about the logic we use to sometimes keep ourselves doing stuff, even if it feels like time to let go. We're going to be using a lot of discernment for those beginnings and endings and figuring out what they are, and understanding why they mean something to each of us. We don't have to do everything that is offered up to us. This is a very busy energetic in the sense that it will offer up tons of ideas, hundreds of ideas at any given moment. And we could pick up any one of those. So getting to listen to our true self is really important. Experimentation is kind of at the core of this transit, and philosophical reimagining. And what's really important here is playing when you can. Not everything needs to be heavy. Not everything needs to be perfect. And I am very aware that the world is in a very heavy place right now. And that being playful, being lighthearted could feel very selfish and horrible. But it's important because we're alive here, and it's an important part of all of it. Once again, we can hold many things as true at the same time. And a lot of spiritual traditions would even say that people who are imperfect, who are struggling along, who aren't these perfect beings doing all the perfect actions, are the ones that are much more closely linked to spirit, to art, to the process. So you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be this ideal citizen, this ideal person to experiment and to be closer to the divine and to the art that wants to unfurl from you. So letting go of perfection is huge here. I wanted to end our chat today just by pulling a card or two, doing a little intuitive reading. I know many of you like the comfort of just this moment that we share together here to feel through what this coming year is going to bring. I highly recommend just journaling about your relationship to this idea of this ever-present divine force. 6 of Pentacles wanted to come out. That's very fitting with our conversation about expansion and contraction and the importance of that balancing when we're working with this very open-minded, electrical, fast-moving kind of transit. I just want to pull one other card to go with that. An 8 of Cups. So interesting. It's just so interesting, the things that come out in these conversations. So 6 of Cups, or 6 of Pentacles, I'm sorry. This image itself can be problematic at times, I would say. But at its core, this is about energy of being allowed to move through the world. Not hoarded up, not held back, but allowed to circulate. Ourselves allowed to circulate. And I think that message is really important here. Like I mentioned at the very beginning of our conversation, Jupiter, when we're talking about growth and expansion, I would actually replace those words with unfurling. and what is longing to be unfurled. And Six of Cups is a suggestion that we might have gifts, ideas, longings that we maybe have been hoarding away, keeping to ourselves, locking down inside of ourselves, that need unfurling. And we might be getting asked to unfurl them, to share them, to give of them, to allow them space in the world, and that is vulnerable. I think the other side of this card is what I was just about to mention with the journaling about receiving when it comes to Jupiter, because Jupiter is very giving of ideas, giving of opportunity, kind of giving of energy. Do we let ourselves receive that grace? Do we let ourselves receive that flow? So this is a really great time before we begin this transit to just think about what's longing to unfurl, what are you longing to share and give generously of in the world, and what are you uncomfortable with receiving, or are you comfortable with it? How comfortable are you? Where do you want support from this Jupiterian Gemini conversation to come in and hold you? Both of these things are asking to be present in the process of this coming year. Now, the other side is a card that I think showed up not too long ago in one of our chats, I think for one of the moons, the Eight of Cups. I love this card. This is one of my favorite energies. I think it's something that I'm learning about every year of my life, because I always say this is like a card where there's a party going on and everybody's still at this party. They're having a great time, but you just know it's time to leave. You need to go home. You got something else you need to do. It's time to let it go. But you can see that everybody else is still really in there, and you kind of wish that you could stay, and you feel kind of like you're outside of it now because you're having to leave and go on your own journey. But there's also this deep truth to it. So this is making me think about, I just mentioned that book Quit by Annie Duke, and discernment and figuring out what needs to go, what needs to be let go. When working with Jupiter, while it is about expansion, it's often when we realize there's something we're ready to grow, we also are simultaneously realizing what we'll have to leave then, what we'll have to say goodbye to, what will really be required of us to allow that unfurling to happen. And once again, preparing ourselves to know that it's okay for certain elements to shift or end so that our next unfurling can arrive is a really great way to prepare for this transit. When we know that in becoming and changing in this mutable energy, that certain elements are going to come to a close, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not missing a beat. You're not messing up. It's not this shameful thing that everybody's going to judge, because I guarantee you, so many people right now are going through this kind of loss process of what was the forms that they had. And I can relate. I'm in there with you all. And it's not shameful. It's okay. But we are being asked to kind of change our form right now. I'm getting full body shivers talking about this. So these are really interesting cards that came out for us here in this conversation. If you are looking for a little bit of community and support, you can join my Magic Makers gathering on Patreon. It's for my Magic Makers tier, and we gather a couple of times a month and have a conversation. We're going to be exploring Jupiter and Gemini together. We're going to be journaling together and doing a little meditation together, and then just talking about how we're feeling with all of it, talking about how we feel working with this weekend. You may be watching this past May 26th when we're doing that, but you can always join us for future chats. So I'd love to see you there. I also am going to have so many more resources about Jupiter and Gemini season for all my tiers over there. And you can catch all of Journey Through the Major Arcana. It is live now. You can catch up with all 12 sessions, and we go through all 22 cards. It's a very powerful journey. It changed me as I was going through it. By the end of it, my energy field changed so much working with those 22 archetypes that my life changed in meaningful ways. So I highly recommend checking that out. It's a great way to support me and allow me to keep doing this work here and sharing it with all of you. So let me know, are there topics that you'd like to see me talk about in the upcoming weeks? I would love to hear what you'd love to see in this space. And I hope you all have a beautiful beginning to Jupiter and Gemini. Take care of yourself. Make a game plan for your contraction and for your rest and for allowing yourself a little bit of space to let go of some things. And I will see you right back here for our next chat.